Introduction to the simulation environment. I'm going to talk through just a few very simple things about getting the software available to you, and then we're going to dive into Revit and start to have a look at it. Your task for this week, following this session, is to review the material that's on Mole, get on Revit, and start to play with it. Okay, there's no specific task in terms of simulation. I just want you to get into Revit, play with the sample files. You can't break it. Just get in there, try everything. Okay, just get familiar with it. And I'll talk you through some of that. Okay, software. So the first thing to do is watch my short video, which is on Mole, about how to download and install Revit. But there's a few links here. The link at the bottom here is the help site for Revit 2016, which looks like this. And it's a really great site, really fantastic. You can search for things. There are lots of videos, lots of little short videos there. Great advice, really brilliant place. First place to go. If you click on the help button in Revit, it will take you here anyway. But yeah, really great. And what I would ask you before knocking on my door for help is go here first, okay? Obviously, if you can't find a solution, come and ask me. Okay, 3 options for getting yourself on Revit. First one, floor 18 and floor 19 of the Arts Tower, we've got 2 computer suites. They are open access to you. You don't need to book. The only restriction being if there's a class in those rooms. The floor 19 computer room has more classes, floor 18 not very many, but generally you can find a computer in one of those rooms. Revit is pre-installed. They are fast computers. The floor, let me get this right, floor 18 has new computers, just bought in the last month, new screens, really good graphics cards, really fast machines with good screens. But however, don't get too hung up on your hardware. I mean, if you notice what I'm running Revit on, this is a Surface Pro. This is a, this is like a kind of tablet almost, but it seems to be working okay. If you're wondering about the hardware requirements, just type into Google Revit 2016 hardware requirements, and it'll take you through to the Autodesk site. And what they've done there, quite sensibly, they've split it into 3, into kind of small size projects, medium and large. And what they're saying is, if you're doing small buildings, kind of like what we're doing here, you don't need a very fast machine. If you're doing an enormous airport in Revit, huge model, then you need a more powerful machine. But generally we find reasonable laptops, or even these are actually okay. But first option is to use the computer rooms here. Second option, any university managed desktop PC will have Revit, but you normally have to install it. So you have to go to the software, go to the programs, find Revit 2016 and click on the install, and it will install it to that machine. Those computers around the university are they're not really specified for Revit in terms of graphics cards, but they're okay. The benefit being that you have 24-hour access, information commons, the diamond. I think you can get in 24 hours now. Okay. Third option is to install it on your own device. The benefit is that the software is free, and that's all explained in the video, how you get a license. Revit will run on laptops remember that the rendering and the energy simulation is done on the cloud anyway. So you don't, for rendering, you don't need a fast machine because it's not doing it on your machine. Okay. Most students find it convenient to have it on their own device. So if you've got a laptop, most students find they quite like to have it rather than having to rely on the machines here. But, you know, up to you. The other benefit on your own laptop is you're in control of any plugins. So there are quite a few Revit plugins out there which you might want to try. You can install those on your own machine. Now, Mac users, Revit does not run on Mac OS at all. Okay. If you want to have Revit on your Mac computer, you have to install Windows, either through Boot Camp or by partitioning your hard drive and installing Windows onto it. Which I do know a number of people who have been running Revit on a Mac, and it's fine. It does work. Okay. There's a few links there just for some guidance. Reference. If you go onto the University Library Star Catalogue and just type in Revit, there are quite a few guidebooks to Revit on there. There's nothing yet for 2016. That will be coming, but don't worry about that too much because the differences between Revit 2014 and 2016 are quite small, and you'll find most things that you're doing, you will be doing it in Revit 2016, but the advice for 2014 would still be exactly the same. The same applies with my videos. My videos that are online now are all for 2014 version, but you'll find that 99% of the time they're exactly the same. Okay, I will update to 2016 as we go through the course. Some of these are available online. So this one in particular, you can download it. I think it maybe gives you a 3-day download, I'm not sure, and then you have to go back and re-download it. But if you want the convenience of just having something on your computer, then that's useful. But you know, as I say, the online Revit Help is incredibly useful. But you know, equally these books are useful. Okay, so we're going to go now into a quick introduction to the user interface. And we are using Revit 2016. Obviously it's only 2015 now, but they always bring the software out a little bit in advance. And the changes are not huge, but I thought it was best to run with the latest software now, you know, rather than using 2014. You can still download 2014, 2015 and 2016. That's explained in the video. Vasari, as I mentioned earlier, Autodesk are no longer supporting it, so we've decided to get rid of it. Equally, another old product, Ecotect, which, anybody here used Ecotect? Yeah, a few of you. We made a decision a few years ago not to support Ecotect anymore. Autodesk have not supported it for many, many years. It's not been updated, and in fact I believe you can't now download it. So I think if you have an existing copy, you can keep it, but I don't believe you can download it anymore. So we don't want to run, you know, I don't want to run a module using old software. Although actually, you know, Ecotect was quite good and it was ahead of its time, but Autodesk have not supported it. The idea from Autodesk is that they bring all the elements of Ecotect into Revit, which they have done to a certain extent, but not everything. But that's how it is. But I'm sure it will change. Okay, so we're going to go into Revit. Now, first thing just to point out, because I'm working on multiple projectors, and because I'm recording, I've downgraded my screen resolution. So what you're seeing here is 900 high by 1440 wide, which is okay, but it does mean that when you're working in Revit, you're a bit cramped for space. Normally I would run Revit on a high resolution screen and a second monitor. And in practice, you'll find most firms now run it on 2 big monitors. Monitors are so cheap now. You know, you can buy a huge monitor for £90. You can buy a 4K monitor now for, I believe, £400, £500. So, you know, you'll find most architects and engineers now work with twin monitors. Obviously, I'm not going to work with twin screens here, or you'd only see half of the picture. But just to be aware that normally what you'd probably do is have your model in one window and all your toolbars on the other window. And it just speeds things up. It's just quicker and easier. Okay, but this is okay. At this resolution, it's still fine. Okay, all I've done here is opened Revit, which was just sat down here under Autodesk. So Revit 2016, that's all I've done already. So I've just opened Revit there. And what Revit does is it takes you to this opening screen. And you've got some options here. You've got open, new, templates, and you've got some sample files. And over here in resources, you've got help, you've got Revit community, you've got video, some really useful stuff. Okay. And what we're going to do today, and as I say, what I want you to do for this week, is just to dive in and play with the sample projects. So I'm going to click here on the sample architecture project, just here. And we'll let that open. And this is just a sample project that comes with Revit. And you know, you can go. It's a house. It's got a site, but you can go in and have a little bit of a play with it. Now, straight away, I'm going to do some shortcuts. I'll tell you those in a moment. What is a bit misleading about this file is it opens like this. These are actually just JPEG images. So it's a bit odd that their sample file opens and it looks like you have these renders in it. They've actually been inserted as JPEGs, but don't worry about that. Okay. Right. Typical work setup. You've got your main window in the middle here, and you can have lots of windows open in the middle. I'll show you that in a moment. Along the top left hand, you've got the Revit button, and like most Windows software now, that's where you go for save, export, print. Okay, options are there as well. So that's your sort of home. Okay, and then like most Windows software now, you've got your kind of open, save along the top. All right. Here, you see where my name is. That's because I'm signed in. And some of the services you need to be signed in to your account. That's explained in the video, how to get an account. It's very straightforward. And then in the middle, you've got your file name here. Okay? And then we've got lots of different toolbars. Come back to those in a minute. On the left, this is quite a typical setup with, you've got a properties window at the top and a project browser at the bottom. Now, if you had multiple screens, this is where you'd be dragging those windows off onto the other screen to create lots of space here. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is just open another view here to show you some of the capabilities. So if we look down at the browser view here, If it's a bit small, don't worry, you can watch it on the video later. So down here in the project browser, this is where everything in the model is stored. I'm just going to minimize some of those. So if we just minimize, start with everything minimized there. We've got views, we've got legends, schedules, sheets, families, groups, Revit links. So, most important concept in Revit is 3D. It is a single 3D model. End of story. There is no 2D plans, there are no 2D sections, you're not drawing in a kind of two-dimensional manner. The basic concept is you make a 3D model, and from that model you get views. Okay? So if we look in our views here, if I just expand that, floor plans, 3D views, elevations, sections, detail views, renderings. So let's go into floor plans. I'll double click on level 1. And it's a bit confused because of my screen resolution. But first shortcut to remember, WT. Windows tile, WT. Really useful one. And it tiles all the windows you have open. Next really useful one, ZA. Zoom all. There is a shortcut list, by the way. I'll find that for you. I'll put the link to it on Mole. You don't need to remember these. There is a whole list of all the shortcuts. And I'm going to close this this sheet view down for now. So I'm just going to click on that cross. And under 3D views, I'm going to double click on this 3D view. And that's opened. You see it's opened that window rather messily over my existing window. WT, Windows tile, tidies it up. ZA, zoom all, zooms everything. Okay, really, really useful shortcuts. You'll find yourself using those a lot. So here is our 3D model. In the 3D view, that is essentially what is in this file. It's that 3D model. This plan is just a view. It's not, this is not lines. That's not a rectangle. That's not a colored shape. That's not a green block. It's a view. It's just a view of the model. Okay. In the 3D model, let's have a little look at some of the controls. So your scroll wheel, as you'd expect, scrolls. Okay, zooms, sorry. ZZ zooms a window. I will give you all these shortcuts. I'm going to throw them out at you now, but there are lots, and to be honest, I don't use half of them. I mean, I must confess, I normally use Revit with a stylus, which is programmed with all these shortcuts in. I'm not going to expect you all to go and buy a stylus. It's fine with a mouse, but I quite like working with a pen instead, but don't worry about that. ZE, zoom extents. So ZZ, zoom a window. ZE, zoom extents. What else? Hold down the middle button and you pan, as you'd expect. Scroll wheel zooms. What else? Hold down Shift and the middle mouse button and you orbit. Three-dimensional orbit. Okay. So those are some of the basic zooms, really useful. There are more. You've also then got this, what's called the view cube here. And this is really great as well. It's a bit small. You can kind of see that, I think. Okay. Really great. If you just click on that and drag it, it will rotate the model. If you click on a corner and drag it, it will pivot the model about its center. Really great. If you click on the top, it will take you to the top. If you click on the top edge, it will take you to that view. Top corner, it will take you to that view. Take you to the elevations. So that's a really, really useful tool. Okay. And this is what you need to just play with this week. I'm not going to show you lots of sophisticated tools today. I'm just going to show you some basics for you to go away and have a play with. Okay, you've also got this little button here. Now, personally, I don't use this. And that gives you this kind of floating control, which has pan. It's got zoom. What else? Orbit. And it's got some tools for walking with a view. It's just my preference, but I personally find that annoying. It's like it's stuck to my mouse. I'm like, get off. Okay. But, you know, I'm sure some people love it. I personally get rid of it, but, you know, it's up to you. It's your preference. Okay, but, you know, it's there anyway. Right. So those are a few basic sort of zoom controls in a 3D view. Let's now go to our 2D view, and I'm going to maximize that just in the conventional, you know, as you'd expect, maximize that. ZE, zoom extents. ZZ, zoom in. So that's zoomed us in. ZE, zoom extents, or you've got your mouse. And as you expect, the mouse kind of it kind of zooms into where you are, where you're pointing, and then by clicking the mouse you can pan. Okay. And I mean, you might notice that my computer is not, you know, it's coping perfectly okay with this model. There's no real sort of lag when I'm panning. Okay. So those are a few basic controls. WT, Windows Tile, ZE. Let's just open a few more views now. So I'm going to go down into sections here. Building section. Let's open that, and then let's open an elevation at the same time. As before, we get a bit of a mess because it puts them on top of each other. WT tiles them all. ZA zoom extents all. So it's a really quick way of tidy up what you've got. Okay, if you close one of those, if you then do WT again, it will fill that space. So it'll just, you know, use that space as you wish. If you want to control which window is where, you'll have to drag them. And normally, it doesn't always work, but normally if you kind of roughly drag them and size them to where you want them, as I say, this doesn't always work, then fingers crossed, when you do Windows Tile, it will fill the space neatly for you. Right, let me just show you another thing. Let's open some views, 3D view. Alright, lots of views opened. Now what Revit will... it's crashed. No, it hasn't. I thought it had. What Revit will do is it will let you open view after view after view. And you just need to keep an eye on that, or you'll end up with 30 views open, and you'll find it will start to get a bit slow. Now, what you can do is, up at the top here, you've got this switch Windows button up there. Click on that, it will show you all the views you've got open. So it shows me I've got 6 views open. Now, imagine that I'd minimized a few of these. Windows Tile, ZA. So I've minimized, and they are here, so I can see I've got these two minimized windows, but it's not that apparent that I've got some windows minimized. And that's where people can get into trouble. If I just open a few more, minimize them. This is where you can end up with lots of windows open without realizing. Now, you can, of course, just go here and close those. There's also this button here at the top, Close Hidden Windows. And that will get rid of those minimized windows. Bearing in mind, these are just views. So by closing it, you're not deleting anything. It's just a view. That's all it is. So I close those down. WT just to fill the space again. Right. Okay, so there's a few basic sort of zoom controls. Now, the other thing just to note is in Revit, what's quite useful, when you hover over a button, you get, do it again, you get a basic bit of help, default 3D view, then it will expand and it will give you a bit more information. The main tools, if I go into a plan view here, when you hover over one of these main toolbars, it will eventually, for most of them, it will go into a video. Not for all of them. Is that one going to do it? No. Some of them, can't find one now. Some of them have little videos hidden under there as well. You can always press F1 for more help. But that's useful, just, you get a basic bit of information about what those tools do. All right. Next thing, I'm just going to close these two down. Windows Tile, WT, ZA, Zoom All. Next thing is, across the top, you've got these toolbars. And remember the slide in the earlier session about the cockpit with all the buttons? Well, that's the kind of territory you're getting into here. Some of these you may never need to use. Okay, there's a lot there, but you might not need it all. What they've done is they've grouped common tools, like with most sort of Windows software nowadays. It's the same in Word, same in PowerPoint. They've grouped together tools under common kind of ribbons. So it's the same in Revit. So you click on your architecture, and it brings you into a series of sort of architecture-related tools, which are all about making elements. It's all about making doors, making walls. So kind of makes sense. That's all grouped under an architecture tab. Structure, which I'll be honest, I never use, is about making structural components. And don't normally find that I need to use that. Systems, again, is more about mechanical and electrical installations. And again, as an architect, I've never needed to use that. Okay. Insert is about inserting and linking files. Now, in practice, that's something that you might need to use, but for your purposes here, you won't use it very often. I will show you, I think it's next week, I'll show you how to insert an image, and we'll cover how to load a family, but again, it's not an area you need to use a lot. I mean, you've got things like link Revit can be useful if you want to link to Revit files. Link IFC, don't find we normally need to use that. Link CAD, you can bring in AutoCAD files, but it's not really the way Revit works. So bringing in sort of 2D information is not, it's not really what Revit's about, but you can, you know, you can do it. And you've got import as well. So a bit more complicated. You can link files, you can import them. So I'm not really covering that in this course, but it's there. Annotate is quite useful. And annotate is about things that are not three-dimensional models. So it's things like adding text, adding a dimension. Under annotate, you can do a little bit of 2D drawing. So in any view, although I said it's a three-dimensional view, you can you can add a line if you want, a 2D piece of information to that view. You don't do it very often, but you can. So that was under annotate. Things like putting notes, putting tags is all done under annotation. Analyze. Now we will use analyze, but we're not going to use any of the load analysis. We will be using these ones at the end, which are hidden away, which are our energy analysis tabs. Okay, so don't worry about it for now, but in the sessions later on in the course, we'll be showing you how to use these analyze buttons. The rest of them we won't touch. Okay? So it's very much that idea that there's lots of buttons, but we're not using many of them. Okay. Massing and site we will use, and these are tools about making site models, making basic massing models. That will all be explained next week. Collaborate we definitely will not use. Collaborate is something that you do use in practice, which is really good, really powerful, and this is what you use in Revit to allow lots of people to work on the same file at the same time. And this is incredibly powerful. I was working on a school building, and we had, I think at one stage we had 10 people in the office all working on the same model at the same time with no problems, no clashes. The software is obviously very well written that it just manages the control of the central file. Now it's not like, if any of you have used ArchiCAD, what ArchiCAD would do is it would lock out an entire floor, for example. So if I was working on level 2, nobody else could be in there. Revit seems to be much more sophisticated, that as long as your two people are not trying to both change the same element, I could be changing that wall and somebody else could be changing that ceiling at the same time in the same file. But for our purposes, you don't need to use it. View we will use, and view is where we will do our renderings from and our lighting analysis. Manage, we'll use that a little bit, not a lot. Manage is where you're in control of the materials, any kind of standards or units that you have in the file. We'll just use it very lightly. Add-ins we'll come to for solar analysis in a later session. And modify you will use a lot, because modify tab is the tab for when you want to modify an existing element. Okay, so that's just a kind of basic overview of what's there without going into any detail. Now what you might find slightly odd in Revit when you first come to it is, if I put that on Architecture tab at the top, okay, this contextual tab will change depending on what I'm doing. So I've put that into architecture, but if I go into the model here and select an element, it changes automatically to the Modify tab. Because what Revit is doing, it's saying, well, you've selected a wall, so I'm assuming you want to modify it. So that changes to the Modify tab. And at first I remember finding it quite strange that that would change without me doing it. But once you get used to it, it's actually very effective, because you click on an element and immediately you can go up here and start to modify that element. Okay, that's one of the videos. You know, I mentioned there are little videos. This one, you see, it's just explaining how to use that tool through a short video. Okay. Right. So, let's move on. There's our model. What I'm going to do now is look a little bit at our properties here. Properties tab here. So if I just zoom in a bit over here, and let me select this here. So if I just undo that, press escape to deselect it. As I hover my mouse over parts of the model, they turn blue. And if while they are blue I click on it, then it selects it. And you'll see now in my properties it's telling me it's a kitchen island. And if I look down, there'll be a little bit more information about it under here. It tells me what level it's at, just gives me a little bit of information. If I click on a wall over here, then that's now telling me about my wall. And again, it's giving me properties, information about that wall. Okay, so that's the purpose of the properties. When you've got nothing selected, it's actually giving you the properties of the view that you're in. So the view that I'm in, which is the floor plan view, it's just telling me some properties about that view. Okay, let's just maximize that floor plan, ZE for zoom extents, and we'll have a little look at some of these buttons along the bottom. Now they're really tiny, but I'll tell you what they all do anyway. So the first one is your view scale. Now it's only a view scale. The model is modelled at 1:1. 1 metre is 1 metre in the model. But for the view, you can change your scale. So for example, if we change that to 1:500, the model is now viewed at a different scale, but the text has stayed as it was. Put that down to 1:20. Then we're now viewing the model at a much smaller scale, but our text has stayed at the scale it was. Put that back to 1:100. Okay, the next one here is the detail level. And what Revit have done is they've kind of simplified this. And although you can customize it, but the default is you have coarse, medium, or fine. And all they've done here is, for any element, they've thought about, well, how would you like that to view? So if I just try and zoom in and find a good example. If I try zooming in over here. Okay, so let's start with coarse. So I've put that into coarse view, and you notice my walls have gone black. The doors are a bit simple now. They're drawn quite kind of simple icons. If So I put that back to medium. Let's see how that looks. So at medium, we see some of the details of the wall build up. The door looks the same to me. And if we put it into fine, that didn't seem to make much difference there. But you've generally got those three settings. Another shortcut, TL, thin lines. TL is useful. It just gets rid of line thickness. Okay. It only changes it in the view. It won't change it when you print it. So that was your detail level down here. The next one, visual style. Let's go into the 3D view actually. So there's our 3D view. Just zoom in a bit. ZZ. And you notice what I was saying about when you hover over an element, it highlights it in blue. It's exactly the same in a 3D view. Okay, exactly the same. If I click on it, it's selected it. Escape deselects. So if we go back down to our visual style here, I'm sure you're all familiar with this from other software packages. Wireframe, turns it to a wireframe. Hidden line, yeah, as you'd expect. Shaded, puts the colours on, gives it a shade. Consistent colours, does a sort of flat colour. Realistic, start to do a sort of material render. Ray trace, I'm not going to click on that one because that'll take ages. Okay, go back into a shaded view there. So those are your basic controls of how you view the window. Okay, next one. Zoom out a bit there. Sun path on or off? Sun path on. Brings you a sun path. Sun settings. Let's just go single day. Okay. So I do cover this in a later session, but just to quickly show you that. With the sun path on, you have you have the path of the sun on your site. Okay. And if we go to the next one, shadows, and put the shadows on, and I'll just change that back to a hidden line view. So I've put the shadows on using this button here. So shadows off, shadows on, pretty straightforward. I do cover this in more detail, but just to briefly show you, you can actually just pick up your sun and drag it. So you see I'm dragging that sun around and moving the shadows. Okay, but that is covered in another lecture. Next one, show rendering dialog. We don't use that because we do our rendering on the cloud. And these other ones, crop view, I'll cover that later. Don't need that one. Don't need that one. Don't need that. Don't need that. Okay. So I mean, some of these buttons I've never even used. You don't need them. Okay. Right. So we've covered. I've kind of gone round the screen and showed you what all the buttons do. All right. All I'm going to do now is go into the model and show you a few ways to generate views, and then we'll leave it, and I want you to go away and just play with that over the week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a floor plan. Okay, there's our floor plan. And I'll zoom in here, and we're going to make a section through this building. So I want to view a section through that building. It's going to go Windows Tile, get rid of that, Windows Tile, Zoom All. I'll just turn off that sun path there. Zoom in a bit. And here, ZZ zoom in. To make a section, we go up to the View tab. Click on View, Section. Creates a section in the view. Okay. Click on that, and then move into your plan view. Click. Click again, and the section has been created. You can't see it yet, but it's there. And it's put this section line to show us where that section is. If you double click on the little pointy bit, it will open the section that you just created. So if I just open those both at the same time, zoom in here. So there's the section that I've just created, and here it is. Here's the view. If I click on that section and drag it, then the section on the left is updated live. So if I just do that again, if I drag that section into a different part of the building, then the view of the section changes. And this is what I was saying about this. The whole point about Revit is you're not drawing a section as such. So, once upon a time, you might have sat in an architect's office in AutoCAD and drawn that section from lines. But of course, what you can't do then is change it. So, here, if I just drag that section, it immediately is updating the view. So it's really rapid way of working. Okay, just a few other things about that section. If I just zoom out a bit, it's a bit hard to see there, but you can just make out this dotted box here. And what that is that's the extents of that section view. So if I click on the arrow here and make that bigger, my section gets wider. If I make it smaller, I'm getting a smaller view. Just make that wider, like that. You can also limit the distance crop of the section. So if I drag the distance to here, then it will only show me everything up to that point and then nothing behind it. So that's quite a powerful tool. If we go back into our section, we can, as before, we can put the shadows on. We can change the view settings here. Put that into fine. If I just zoom in. So I went from, we were in coarse here, and I changed that to fine, and it's changed the view. Okay, so that's the basic principles of sections. You can also modify that section in the section view. If you hover over the crop box here, click on that, and grab one of these little dots, then you can also control your section extents there. Okay. The best way to learn this, I really believe, is just to sit and play with it this week. Okay, I can show you it here, but you need to just get in there, start destroying these models, pull them apart, click on things, delete them, move them, make sections. Doesn't matter, you can't break it. Really get stuck in with it. Right, last thing I'm going to show you is about 3D views. So I've opened my 3D view there, and I'm going to start modifying this view. But what I want to do, let's say I don't want to destroy that view that I've got. I want to make another view. You can have as many views as you like. Hover over the view that you want to base this on, over there. Right click, duplicate view. You've got two possible options: duplicate with detailing. Okay, duplicate with detailing, the only difference it means is it will also duplicate any text or any annotations. Duplicate will only duplicate the three-dimensional model information. So let's just go with duplicate for now. So there it is, and it's called it 3D copy. Okay, let's just rename that here. Let's just call that site 3D view. Windows tile, WT, ZA. I'll just get rid of these, don't want those anymore. So I've got my original view, and I've got my copy view. Which one's which? Site 3D view is the top one. If you're ever confused about which view is which, if you click on it in the project browser, it will highlight it. Get rid of that. ZE zoom extents. I'm just going to switch that. I'll leave it on. Leave it on. Okay, what I want to show you now is the crop box. Sorry, section box, which is quite a useful tool. So in your 3D view properties, scroll down, you've got this little option here, section box. If I switch that off, in this instance, it didn't make much difference. Switch it back on, and what the section box allows you to do is it allows you to crop a 3D view. I'm just going to switch my shadows off. Okay. Just bear with me a second. Okay. Right, well, the reason I was struggling there is I had it's really tiny down here, but down here you've got a hide crop region button there, which I needed to switch on. What that, I'll just show you that crop region, where is it, that one there, if I switch that off, then you can't see the crop on that view. If I switch it back on again, it will allow you now to select that cropping boundary and just drag that in to control the extent of the view. Okay, so that's quite useful. Okay, I think I'll leave the section box. We'll cover that next week. I don't want to overload you, but I'm just going to show you one last thing. So, imagine you've created these sections. You've got these views. You want to get them onto a PDF. You want to get them onto a sheet. Okay, it's no use having these lovely images, but you can't get them out of Revit. It's pretty simple, actually. Put the shadows back on that. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to create a sheet. So if you scroll down here to Sheets, and we've got some sheets already, hover over Sheets, right-click, New Sheet. And you can either have a title block or you can have none. Gives you the options. In a practice, you would have lots of title blocks. I'm just going to go with an A1 metric title block. So it's created me a blank sheet. Okay. This one happens to have a border on. Could just be a blank piece of paper if you wanted. Windows tile, ZA, zoom all. So I want to get that 3D view onto that sheet. And it's pretty straightforward, actually. Find your 3D view in your project browser, which is this one, Site 3D View. Click on it, drag it onto the sheet, let go, and then click where you want to place it. And it places it on the sheet, and it's that simple. Okay, really straightforward. Now, because that's live, if I go into this view and change that view, it changes on the sheet. Okay, because it's all live information. Let's say I want to add that section that we created as well, which I think was that one. Yeah. Let's just, for clarity, let's just rename that so that we know what it's called. Let's call it section living room. Get that section, click it, drag it, drop it on the sheet. There it is. Let's just drag that one over a bit. So very quickly we put those views onto the sheet. Okay, and this is the kind of the power of a three-dimensional BIM model, that we've very quickly created a section, created a 3D image, put them on a sheet. It's all live. You know, that would have taken you hours to draw manually. Very last step, to get that sheet onto a PDF or to print it. Again, it's really straightforward. You go File, Print, choose your printer, or print to PDF. Choose where it's going, off it goes. I won't do it now, and that will make a PDF of that view. So it's really, really quite simple. Okay, we'll stop there.